Part of understanding your eating behavior is to look at the patterns of your eating. The foods that trigger you, the times of the day. I speak of the Cinderella hour. Cinderella went down the tubes at midnight. Most people with food go down the tubes from 4 o'clock on. Why? It's related to fatigue, blood sugar levels. But know the pattern, know the times, know your emotional triggers. Sometimes eating is not about food, but other people who are triggering you. And there are trigger situations, such as going to certain types of restaurants, going to a party where there are all kinds of snack foods. Have you ever noticed what happens on Super Bowl Sunday? That's a trigger situation for many people. Sometimes the eating may not be about the food, but just that you're upset at another person or a situation. These are things we can change because in life, developing creative strategies is not only a pathway to your weight goal, but to a happier life. And there are some other patterns that are not learned, but are biological. And if you think about the cookie, if you have the gene for sweetness, the cookie may stimulate your appetite. I happen to have the gene for sweetness. Taking one bite does not satisfy me, but stimulates me to want more. Whereas I don't have the gene for salt. So I would not be attracted to a pretzel, or if you remember the potato chip commercial that I will refer to at times, it had the slogan, "We bet you can't have just one." Well, my biological trigger is not salt. So I can have one potato chip. It satisfies. However, crunch is also a biological trigger. If the potato chip, think about it, was soggy, you would have no trouble having just one. So know the characteristics of food that biologically trigger your appetite. Know the emotional triggers, the people, places, situations that get you frustrated and you may want to eat or drink. I call them the triggers, because sometimes eating is not about food, but what is eating you. There is a very important principle. It is so important that a Nobel Prize was given for this recognition that is ignored again and again in the field of dieting. I was taught at the university, teach your patients, eat half and leave the other half on the plate so they don't eat too much. Well, that is a very rational statement. But if you go to a restaurant, you'll quickly observe no one does that. People are finishers. Even if they don't like the food, they will finish what's on the plate. And in 2002, the Nobel Prize Committee gave the Nobel Prize for the recognition that in making important life decisions, human beings often do not act rationally, whether it be in economics, food choices, romantic choices, shopping. We are much more influenced by impulse than rationality at times. And these factors that compromise our good judgment can be such simple issues as fatigue, frustration, boredom. The important thing is to ask, how can we change these triggers? We may not always be able to change our biological triggers, but we can limit the times we eat certain foods or buy certain foods, or the circumstances in which we eat them, such as if you have a sweets craving, finding great substitutes like some of the new bars, protein bars, an apple, or maybe saving your dessert for special occasions. And in terms of habit patterns that are not biological, what has been learned can be unlearned. One of the unique techniques that I have developed to change trigger responses, I call cognitive switching. I've taken the techniques of the advertising world. Why the advertising world? When I have a doctorate in psychology and a postdoc in nutrition, because the most powerful force to change human behavior will be found in the motivational techniques of the advertising world. They motivate us to buy foods or products we may not ever need or use, but they create an internal need for it very skillfully. And so I've used the techniques of the food advertising world and other advertising psychologies to change how we speak to ourselves about certain foods or situations. And let me give you an example. Have you ever noticed the State Farm commercial? Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Whether you buy the insurance or not, you never forget the slogan. The human mind hangs on to slogans. And that is why I have developed a series of slogans based on studying the winners at weight control. How do they speak to themselves? How do they handle certain situations that have enabled them to overcome the odds that have sunk so many, and not only lose the weight, but keep it off for a lifetime? And included with this video package are the steps to make your own advertising message, to redirect your thinking, your behavior, and to even manage your biological triggers so you can lessen their effect if you cannot completely erase it. And part of changing your thinking is also changing the thinking that can sabotage your progress. there are certain phrases that are associated frequently, very frequently, with missteps and gaining weight back. Let me give you some examples. A favorite expression that opens the door to trouble is just, the word just. Just one, just a little, just this one time. Not realizing, when you think historically, that having just a little stimulates a desire for more and more. There is a great truth I want to share with you that I have learned from doing this work for decades. I have learned it in working with my clients and in my own life, that there may be certain foods, for most of us, that it is easier not to start than to have a little. That's why it's so important to know your history with foods. This way, you realize the wisdom of I don't take the first little taste, I don't begin, I don't have any problem. More clients who have been successful have said to me, a single phrase has helped me. I no longer ask, what is that phrase? But I will tell you what it is. I don't begin, I don't have any problem. And when I say and teach, I don't begin, I don't mean just eating it. I mean romanticizing the food. I mean buying it, even in the name of buying it for guests, when you were the person eating the largest quantity and the guests never asked for it. No, I don't begin means don't romanticize it, don't think about it, and don't keep it too close in your life. But I want to emphasize, I am not and will never say you cannot have it. There is no food in the world you cannot have. This is about making adult choices and realizing a new truth. Does the food work for you or sabotage you? Smart people learn from errors. Otherwise, you end up wearing them. And if you see, after 20 years, 30 years, whatever your age may be, that you haven't learned to have a little, when does a smart person say to herself or himself, perhaps this food does not work for me? It is not a case that I have no willpower. It is not a case that I have a psychological problem, but rather the food works to stimulate my appetite rather than to satisfy it.